know that moment when your entire world tilts sideways and you realize you've made a catastrophic mistake? That's what Sophie Blake felt at exactly 7:43 p.m. on a Wednesday evening, standing in the middle of the Harborview restaurant with a tray of dirty dishes and a growing sense that her legs were made of water. 6 months pregnant and still working double shifts. Her mother would have called it stubborn. Her best friend Mia called it idiotic. Sophie called it survival. Table 9 needs their check. Marcus called from the bar, his weathered face creased with concern. Sophie, you okay? You look pale. I'm fine. The lie came automatically, practiced. She'd been saying it for 6 months. Fine when morning sickness made her vomit between breakfast orders. Fine when her back screamed from carrying heavy trays. Fine when she calculated her bank account and realized she had exactly 3 months of rent saved before the baby came and everything fell apart. The Harborview wasn't fancy by Boston standards. No Michelin stars, no celebrity chef, just honest seafood served with a view of the harbor that tourists paid premium prices to photograph. Sophie had worked there for 3 years, long enough to know every regular's order and which tables tipped well, long enough that Marcus and the kitchen staff had become her family after. Her real family had made their opinions abundantly clear about single motherhood. She balanced the tray against her hip, a maneuver that was getting harder as her center of gravity shifted and headed toward the kitchen. The restaurant was packed tonight. Every table full, the bar 3 deep with the after-work crowd, and Sophie's feet felt like they were walking on broken glass. Just 4 more hours. She could make it 4 more hours. Table 12 flagged her down as she passed. A business dinner, 3 men in expensive suits talking quarterly projections and market analysis. Sophie had served them appetizers 20 minutes ago, barely registering their faces beyond noting who ordered what. "Excuse me, miss." The one at the head of the table looked up, and Sophie felt something flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with the baby. "Could we get another bottle of the Sancerre?" Dark hair, steel-gray eyes, the kind of jawline that belonged in cologne advertisements. He was handsome in that dangerous, don't-get-attached way that Sophie had learned to avoid. But something about him seemed familiar, though she couldn't place why. Of course, she wrote it down, very aware that his gaze had dropped to her visible pregnancy before quickly looking away. Most people did that. The polite ones pretended not to notice. "Anything else?" "That's all, thank you." Professional, distant. Exactly how Sophie preferred customer interactions these days. No personal questions, no judgment, just orders taken and delivered. She was halfway to the wine storage when the floor decided to become the ceiling. One moment Sophie was walking. The next she was swaying, black spots dancing across her vision like malicious fireflies. The tray slipped from her nerveless fingers, dishes shattering with sounds that seemed to come from very far away. "Sophie." Marcus's voice panicked, then nothing but the sensation of falling, of the world tilting wrong, of knowing she was about to hit the ground and being completely powerless to stop it. Except she didn't hit the ground. Strong arms caught her, easing her down with unexpected gentleness. Sophie's vision swam back into focus slowly, sounds filtering through the cotton wool in her ears, worried faces hovering above her. Someone saying to call 911, and those gray eyes, much closer now, filled with concern that seemed almost personal. "Don't try to move." His voice was deep, commanding. The man from table 12. "You're okay." "I've got you." "The baby." Sophie's hand went to her stomach instinctively. "Is the baby—" "Shh, help is coming." "Just breathe." He'd caught her. This stranger in an expensive suit had somehow crossed the restaurant fast enough to catch her before she hit the ground. Sophie could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat where her cheek pressed against his chest, could smell expensive cologne mixing with something that made her foggy brain whisper familiar. "I'm fine." She tried to sit up, but his arms tightened fractionally. "Really, I just got dizzy." "Low blood sugar, probably." "I need to get back to work. You're not going anywhere until the paramedics check you out." His tone left no room for argument. "Marcus, get her some water. And someone find her purse. She'll need her insurance card." The way he took charge should have annoyed Sophie. Instead, she felt something dangerously close to relief. When was the last time someone had taken care of her instead of the other way around? The paramedics arrived within minutes, professional and efficient. They checked her vitals, asked about her due date and prenatal care, suggested she go to the hospital for observation. "I can't afford that," Sophie said bluntly. I'm fine. Just stood up too fast. Ma'am, with a pregnancy this far along. I said I'm fine. She struggled to sit up, very aware that the entire restaurant was watching. That the man who'd caught her was still kneeling beside her, his hand supporting her back. I need to finish my shift. Sophie, go home. Marcus appeared with her purse and jacket. I'll cover your tables. Your health and the baby are more important. I need the tips. I'll cover the tips too. His voice was gentle but firm. Go home, Mija. Rest. Tears burned behind Sophie's eyes. She couldn't afford to rest. Couldn't afford to miss shifts or turn down overtime. The baby was coming in 3 months and she had nothing ready. No nursery, no savings cushion, no backup plan beyond sheer stubborn determination to make this work. Let me take you home. The gray-eyed stranger stood, offering his hand. I have a car outside. Sophie stared at him. I don't even know you. Daniel Crawford. He said it like the name should mean something. When Sophie's expression remained blank, something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, relief? And you are? Sophie Blake, and I can get home fine on my own. Can you? He gestured to where her legs were still shaking. Because from where I'm standing, you can barely stand. Let me help. No strings attached. Just a ride home to make sure you're safe. Every instinct screamed not to trust him. Sophie had learned the hard way that accepting help from handsome strangers led to complications. Led to mornings waking up alone in hotel rooms with nothing. But a note saying it was fun and a phone number that turned out to be fake. Led to positive pregnancy. Tests and 6 months of facing the consequences solo. But looking at Daniel, Crawford's concerned expression, at Marcus hovering anxiously nearby, at the curious stares from other diners, Sophie found herself too tired to argue. Fine, just a ride. Daniel's car turned out to be a sleek black Tesla that probably cost more than Sophie would make in 5 years. He opened the passenger door with old-fashioned courtesy, waiting until she was settled before closing it gently. Where to? He asked, sliding into the driver's seat. Sophie gave him her address in Dorchester, watching his expression for judgment. She lived in a third-floor walk-up in a neighborhood that made most of her coworkers nervous. But it was cheap, and the landlady didn't ask too many questions about single mothers-to-be. That's quite a commute from the harbor, Daniel observed. Pulling into traffic. Can't afford anything closer. How long have you been working at the Harborview? 3 years. Sophie leaned her head against the window, exhaustion hitting now that adrenaline was fading. Why all the questions? Just making conversation, trying to distract you from the fact that you nearly fainted in the middle of a crowded restaurant. I'm fine. You keep saying that. I'm not sure you know what fine actually means. Sophie turned to glare at him. And you do? Mr. Crawford with his Tesla and his expensive suit and his business dinners. When was the last time you had to choose between prenatal vitamins and groceries? Instead of getting defensive, Daniel just looked at her steadily. Never, which is why I'm trying to help. I don't need your pity. Good, because I'm not offering pity. I'm offering basic human decency. There's a difference. They drove in silence for a while, Sophie too tired to argue, and Daniel apparently content to let her process. The city slipped past outside the windows, Boston transitioning from the wealthy harbor district to the working-class neighborhoods where people like Sophie scraped by. When are you due? Daniel asked finally. 3 months. End of September. And the father? Sophie's laugh was bitter. Not in the picture. Never was, really. She felt Daniel's gaze on her, assessing. His loss. The simple statement, delivered without judgment or pity, made Sophie's throat tight. You don't know anything about me. I know you're working yourself into the ground while 6 months pregnant. I know you fainted and your first concern was the baby, not yourself. I know you've got more pride than sense and you're terrified but trying not to show it. He pulled up outside her building, a 3-story walk-up that had seen better decades. How close am I? Uncomfortably close. Sophie grabbed her purse, fumbling for the door handle. Thanks for the ride. Sophie, wait. Daniel's hand caught her wrist gently. Take my card. If you need anything, I won't. Take it anyway, please. Something in his voice made Sophie pause. She took the business card, expensive cardstock with simple black lettering. Daniel Crawford, CEO, Crawford Hospitality Group. Her stomach dropped. Crawford Hospitality owned half the luxury hotels in New England. This man wasn't just wealthy, he was Boston royalty. And she'd just let him drive her home to her rundown apartment building. No, he made it clear what that night meant to him. Nothing. I'm not going to chase down someone who doesn't want to be found. Sophie placed a hand on her stomach. This baby deserves better than a father who has to be guilted into showing up. You're right. Your baby deserves someone who chooses to be there. Every day, no matter what. The way he said it with such conviction made Sophie's throat tight. And you think that's you? I think I want the chance to prove it could be. Before Sophie could respond, the baby kicked, hard. She gasped, her hand flying to her stomach, and Daniel's eyes widened. Was that? Yeah. Sophie took his hand, pressing it to where the baby was moving. She's active today. She? I found out at my last appointment. I was going to tell you. Sophie watched his face as he felt the baby move, seeing wonder and fear and something that looked like love cross his features. It's a girl. A girl. Daniel's voice was reverent. His hand stayed on her stomach, feeling the baby's movements. She's strong. She'd have to be, with me as a mother. She's lucky with you as a mother. Daniel looked up, and Sophie saw tears in his eyes. Sophie, I know this is fast. I know we're doing everything backward, but I want to be here for this. For her, for you, if you'll let me. This was the moment. Sophie could say no, could protect her heart, could keep Daniel at arm's length until he inevitably left. Or she could take the risk. Could believe that maybe, just maybe, this man was different. Okay, she heard herself say. But we take this slow. No rushing, no pressure. Just seeing where this goes. Slow. I can do slow. But his smile suggested he thought slow was relative. Daniel, I mean it. I can't afford to fall for you and have you disappear. I've got a baby coming. I need stability, not romance. What if I could be both? That's a nice fantasy, but real life doesn't work that way. Daniel shifted, sitting beside her on the couch. Sophie, I'm not good at a lot of things. I'm terrible at relationships, I work too much, and I have control issues that my therapist says I need to work on. But I'm very good at keeping my promises, and I'm promising you right now, I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to leave. What if I'm not enough? What if the reality of diapers and sleepless nights makes you realize you made a mistake? Then we'll figure it out together. That's what partners do. Partners. The word settled over Sophie like a blanket. She'd been alone for so long, shouldering everything herself, that the idea of having someone to share the burden with felt almost impossible. I need time to think, she said finally. Take all the time you need. Daniel stood, but not before pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. I'll be here when you're ready. After he left, Sophie sat surrounded by baby gear and tried to make sense of her feelings. 3 weeks ago, Daniel Crawford had been a stranger. Now he was someone she called when the baby kicked. Someone who assembled furniture at midnight and memorized her favorite foods. Someone who looked at her like she was precious instead of just pregnant. It was everything she'd wanted and everything she was terrified to want. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk about Daniel Crawford. Meet me tomorrow. The coffee shop on Newbury Street. 2 p.m. Don't tell Daniel. Victoria. Sophie stared at the message, ice forming in her stomach. Who was Victoria? And why did she need to talk about Daniel? Against her better judgment, Sophie found herself typing back, who is this? The response came immediately. Someone who knows what Daniel doesn't tell you. Come alone. Sophie looked at the pile of baby items, at the evidence of Daniel's care and attention. Then she looked at the message from this mysterious Victoria. Whatever this was, it couldn't be good. But Sophie had learned the hard way that ignoring problems didn't make them disappear. She'd go to the meeting, and then she'd decide if Daniel Crawford was really who he seemed to be, or if she was about to have her heart broken all over again. Bolam, Fortoplam, Kalima Saisi, Tam 2000. Kalima, the coffee shop on Newbury Street, was the kind of place Sophie normally avoided. Artisanal everything, prices that made her wince, clientele that looked like they'd never worried about a bill in their lives. She felt immediately out of place in her maternity jeans and clearance rack sweater. Victoria was impossible to miss. Mid-30s, impeccably dressed in a cream suit that probably cost more than Sophie's car, sitting at a corner table like she owned the establishment. She looked up as Sophie approached, her smile sharp as broken glass. Sophie Blake. Thank you for coming. Victoria gestured to the seat across from her. Please sit. I took the liberty of ordering you herbal tea. Caffeine isn't good for the baby. The presumption immediately set Sophie's teeth on edge. Who are you and what do you want? Direct. I like that. Victoria sipped her espresso. I'm Victoria Harding, Daniel's ex-fiancée. Sophie's stomach dropped. He never mentioned an ex-fiancée. I'm not surprised. Daniel prefers to pretend I don't exist. It's easier than dealing with the mess he made. Victoria pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos. We were together for 4 years, engaged for 6 months. Then he decided corporate law wasn't exciting enough for him and called off the wedding 3 weeks before the ceremony. She turned the phone to show Sophie. Daniel, younger but unmistakable, his arm around Victoria. Both of them smiling at some charity gala, looking like the perfect power couple. That was 7 years ago. Victoria continued. Since then, Daniel has had a pattern. Find someone who needs rescuing, play the hero for a few months, then get bored and move on when reality gets messy. Why are you telling me this? Because you're pregnant and vulnerable, and I don't want to see another woman get her heart broken by Daniel's savior complex. Victoria's expression softened into something that almost looked like concern. I've watched him do this. The artist who needed gallery connections, the grad student with crushing debt, the refugee family he sponsored. He throws money at problems, feels good about himself, then disappears when the situation requires actual emotional investment. Sophie wanted to argue, wanted to defend Daniel, but Victoria's words struck uncomfortably close to her own fears. He seems different with you, Sophie said carefully. They all seem different. That's his talent, making you feel special, making you believe you're the one who'll finally make him stay. Victoria leaned forward. But here's what Daniel doesn't tell his charity cases. He's incapable of real intimacy. His father was cold and distant. His mother died when he was young. He learned to substitute money for emotional connection. And it works for a while. Until you need something money can't buy, like actual presence, like vulnerability, like being there when things get hard. You're just bitter he left you. I'm trying to save you from making my mistake. I love Daniel. I thought I could fix him, make him capable of real love. Instead, I wasted 4 years and ended up humiliated when he canceled our wedding via text message. Victoria's eyes hardened. He'll do the same to you. The moment that baby is born and the reality of parenthood hits, he'll find a reason to leave. A business emergency, a new project, some crisis only he can handle. And you'll be alone with a newborn, wondering why you weren't enough. Sophie's hand went to her stomach protectively. Daniel's not like that. He's been there for me, for 3 weeks. Wait until it's 3 months, 3 years. See if he's still assembling cribs and attending doctor's appointments when the novelty wears off. Victoria pulled out a folder. These are the names and contact information for 5 women Daniel has helped in the past 3 years. Call them. Ask them how it ended. Sophie stared at the folder like it was a snake. Why would you keep this information? Because I've been watching him. Because I still care about him, even if he doesn't deserve it. And because I recognize the look in your eyes. That hope that maybe this time is different. That maybe you're special enough to make him stay. Victoria's smile was sad. You're not. None of us were. You don't know anything about us. I know Daniel Crawford better than anyone alive. I know he'll make you feel like the center of his universe until you actually need him. Then he'll find a way to make his absence your fault. Too needy. Too complicated. Too much reality and not enough fairy tale. Sophie stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. Thank you for your concern. But I can make my own decisions, can you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're a pregnant woman with no support system, falling for a man who's constitutionally incapable of giving you what you need. Victoria's voice turned gentle. Sophie, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to protect you from the inevitable disappointment. I don't need your protection. That's what they all said, right before Daniel proved me right. Sophie walked out without another word. Victoria's folder clutched in her shaking hands. The autumn air hit her face, cold and sharp, as she tried to process what she'd just heard. Was Victoria right? Was Sophie just another in a long line of charity cases? Had she mistaken Daniel's savior complex for actual feelings? Her phone buzzed. Daniel, dinner tonight? My place. I'll make that chicken dish you liked. Sophie stared at the text. 24 hours ago, it would have made her smile. Now it felt loaded with implications she couldn't ignore. She found herself at Mia's apartment instead of going home. Her best friend took one look at her face and pulled her inside. What happened? Sophie told her everything. Victoria, the folder, the accusations about Daniel's pattern of rescue and abandonment. Mia listened without interrupting, her expression growing more concerned. Did you look at the folder? Mia asked when Sophie finished. No. I don't want to invade his privacy. Sophie, if what Victoria said is true, this isn't about privacy. This is about protecting yourself and your baby. Mia picked up the folder. Let me look. If it's nothing, we burn it. If it's something, you need to know. Sophie watched as Mia pulled out the papers. Names, phone numbers, brief summaries of each woman's story. An artist whose career Daniel had launched, then ghosted when she wanted a real relationship. A single mother whose medical bills he'd paid, then stopped returning calls. A refugee, family he'd sponsored, then handed off to his lawyers when they needed more than money. Oh, Sophie, Mia whispered. Maybe there's an explanation. Maybe Victoria is lying. Maybe, or maybe she's telling the truth and you're about to get your heart broken. Mia squeezed her hand. You need to talk to Daniel. Ask him directly about these women. See what he says. But Sophie couldn't bring herself to call him. Instead, she sent a text. Something came up. Can't make dinner. Sorry. His response was immediate. Everything okay? The baby? We're fine. Just need some space. The 3 dots indicating he was typing appeared and disappeared several times. Finally. Okay. I'm here if you need me. That was the problem. He was always there when things were easy. The question was whether he'd still be there when things got hard. Sophie spent the weekend avoiding Daniel's calls and texts. She told herself she needed time to think. Really, she was terrified to hear confirmation that Victoria was right, that Daniel's attention was temporary, that she'd been stupid enough to fall for someone who saw her as a project instead of a person. By Monday morning, she couldn't avoid him anymore. He showed up at her apartment at 7 a.m., looking like he hadn't slept, holding coffee and bagels. We need to talk, he said when she opened the door. Daniel, I told you I needed space, and I'm giving it to you, after we talk. He walked past her into the apartment, setting down the food. Sophie, what happened? One day we're fine, the next you're avoiding me. If I did something wrong, tell me. Who's Victoria Harding? The color drained from Daniel's face. Where did you hear that name? She contacted me. Told me some interesting things about your history of rescue and abandonment. Sophie crossed her arms. Is it true? Are there other women you've played hero for and then ghosted? Daniel sat down heavily on the couch. Victoria contacted you. Answer the question. Yes. The word was barely audible. There have been other people I've helped. People I cared about. But it's not what Victoria made it sound like. Then what was it? Daniel ran his hands through his hair. After Victoria and I ended, I was angry. At myself, at her, at the whole concept of relationships. I'd failed at the one that was supposed to matter most. So I started helping people instead. Fixing problems I could actually solve. Problems that had clear solutions and definite endpoints, like my medical debt. I didn't think about it that way at the time. I just saw people who needed help and I had the means to give it. He looked up at her. But Victoria's right about one thing. I didn't stick around for the messy parts. When people wanted more than I could give emotionally, I found reasons to leave. Business trips, new projects, whatever excuse felt least cruel. Sophie felt her heart cracking. So this is the same. You're helping me until it gets too real, then you'll disappear. No. Daniel stood, crossing to her. Sophie, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Every other time, I knew going in that it was temporary. That I was helping but not committing. With you, it's different. How? How is it different? Because I'm in love with you. The words burst out of him. I'm terrified and completely out of my depth, but I'm in love with you, Sophie. Not the idea of helping you. Not the satisfaction of fixing things. You, the woman who's stubborn and proud and makes me want to be better than I am. Sophie stared at him. You can't just say that and expect. I know. I know I have a terrible track record. I know Victoria. Told you about every time I failed to be what someone needed. She's not wrong. I've been emotionally unavailable and selfish and used charity as a substitute for actual connection. Daniel took her hands. But Sophie, you've changed something in me. These past few weeks, I haven't been playing hero. I've been falling in love, and it's terrifying because I know I could screw this up. I know my pattern, but I also know that walking away from you would be the biggest mistake of my life. How do I know you won't get bored? That when the baby comes and it's messy and hard, you won't find a reason to leave? You don't. I can't prove the future. All I can do is promise to show up every day and try. His voice broke. Sophie, I'm asking you to take a chance on me. Not because I deserve it. I probably don't. But because what we have is real and worth fighting for. Sophie wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. But looking at his face, seeing the fear and hope there, she couldn't shake Victoria's warnings. I need time, she said finally. I need to figure out if I can trust this. Trust you? How much time? I don't know. Just space. To think without you looking at me like that. Like what? Like I'm the most important thing in your world. Because that scares me more than anything. What happens when I'm not anymore? Daniel looked like she'd physically struck him. Sophie, please go. I need to be alone right now. He left without another word, and Sophie sank to the floor, cradling her stomach and crying for everything she was too afraid to believe in. 2 weeks of silence felt like 2 years. Sophie threw herself into preparing for the baby, using every spare moment to avoid thinking about Daniel Crawford and the hole his absence had left in her life. She told herself this was better, safer, that relying on herself was the only guarantee that wouldn't shatter. But every time her phone didn't ring, every morning she woke up without a text from him, the hole got bigger. You look terrible, Marcus observed during her shift at the Harbor View. She'd gone back to work despite his protests, needing the distraction and the tips. When was the last time you slept? I sleep fine. Liar. He slid a plate of food across to her. Eat. You're eating for 2, remember? Sophie picked at the fish, her appetite non-existent. I made the right choice, didn't I? Pushing him away before he could leave? Did you? Or did you leave first because you were scared he wouldn't? The question haunted Sophie for the rest of her shift. Had she been protecting herself or just repeating her own pattern? Her father had left. The baby's father had left, so she'd push Daniel away before he could do the same. Self-fulfilling prophecy at its finest. She was closing the restaurant when her phone rang. Unknown number. Sophie almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Sophie Blake? A woman's voice, professional and concerned. Speaking. This is Jennifer Morrison from Massachusetts General Hospital. I'm calling about Daniel Crawford. You're listed as his emergency contact. Sophie's blood turned to ice. What happened? Mr. Crawford was brought in about an hour ago. Car accident. He's stable now, but he's been asking for you. Can you come to the hospital? Sophie was moving before the woman finished speaking, grabbing her coat and purse. I'm on my way. The drive to Mass General was a blur. Sophie's hand shook on the wheel as worst-case scenarios played through her mind. Daniel hurt, Daniel dying, Daniel asking for her because he had no one else. She should have answered his calls, should have let him explain, should have been brave. Enough to risk getting hurt instead of guaranteeing she'd feel this terrible. The ER was chaos. Sophie pushed through to the nurse's station, her pregnant belly helping people move aside faster than politeness ever could. Daniel Crawford. I got a call. Room 7, down the hall on your left. The nurse smiled kindly. He's okay. Banged up, but okay. Sophie found the room, her heart hammering. Daniel sat on the bed, his shirt torn and bloody, a nasty cut above his eyebrow being tended to by a doctor. When he saw her, his entire face transformed. Sophie. Her name was a prayer. You came. Of course I came, you idiot. She was at his side immediately, her hands hovering over him, afraid to touch. What happened? Are you okay? Is anything broken? Couple of cracked ribs. Concussion. I'll live. His hand caught hers, gripping tight. I'm sorry about calling you. I know you wanted space, but I had to update my emergency contact and there was no one else I'd want. Stop. Just stop. Sophie's voice cracked. Daniel, I've been miserable. Absolutely miserable. I pushed you. Away because I was scared. And then I was too proud to admit I made a mistake, and now you're hurt and I... Hey. Daniel pulled her closer, wincing slightly at the movement. I'm okay. We're okay. We're not okay. I broke your heart because I was too afraid to trust mine. Sophie, look at me. He waited until she met his eyes. I've spent 2 weeks thinking about what you said. About my pattern. About not sticking around. And you were right to be scared. I haven't earned your trust. I haven't proven I'm different. Daniel, let me finish. I thought about walking away, making it easier for you. But then I realized that's exactly what you expected. What everyone expects, for me to leave. His thumb traced over her knuckles. So I'm not leaving. I'm going to keep showing up, keep proving myself, until you believe that I'm here for the long haul. Even if it takes months, years, even if you never let me back in, I'm still going to be here. Sophie's tears spilled over. You can't promise that. What if you change your mind? Then I change my mind. But Sophie, I've never been more certain about anything in my life than I am about wanting to be with you and your daughter. Not because I'm playing hero, because you make me want to be the man I always thought I should be. He touched her face gently. I love you. I'm in love with you. And I know you're not ready to hear it or believe it, but I'm saying it anyway. I called Victoria, Sophie admitted. After the hospital called. I wanted to ask her about you. Daniel tensed. What did she say? That I was an idiot for pushing you away. That she'd seen you with other women you helped, and none of them made you look the way you looked at me. Sophie managed a watery laugh. She said, and I quote, "The bastard finally fell in love, and you're throwing it away because you're scared." Victoria said that. She also said she's been watching you to make sure you didn't screw up my life the way you screwed up hers. Apparently she's been keeping tabs, waiting for you to run. When you didn't, she decided maybe I should know that. Daniel looked stunned. I need to call her and thank her. That's weird, right? Very weird. Sophie wiped her eyes. Daniel, I'm still scared. I'm terrified that this won't work. That you'll wake up one day and realize that a crying baby and a stressed-out single mom isn't the life you imagined. Good. Be terrified. I'm terrified too. But Sophie, I'd rather be terrified with you than safe and alone. You keep saying that. Because I keep meaning it. He shifted, wincing again. Come here. Sophie carefully sat beside him on the narrow hospital bed, acutely aware of her swollen belly pressed against him. Daniel's arm came around her shoulders, pulling her close despite the obvious pain it caused. I'm sorry I pushed you away. Sophie whispered. I'm sorry I gave you reasons to doubt me. Where do we go from here? Forward, together, one day at a time. Daniel pressed a kiss to her hair. And Sophie, I want to be there for the birth. If you'll let me. Not as some charitable bystander, but as someone who loves you and wants to meet your daughter. Our daughter. The correction slipped out before Sophie could stop it. Daniel went very still. What? I mean, if you're going to be there, if you're staying, then she's ours. Both of us. Sophie placed her hand over his on her stomach. I can't give her a father who shares her DNA, but I can give her one who chooses to show up. If that's what you want. Sophie, are you... His voice broke. Are you asking me to be her father? I'm saying if you stick around, if you prove that this is real, then yes. I want you to be her father. Not biologically, but in every way that matters. Daniel was crying now, silent tears tracking down his face. I don't know how to be a father. Neither do I know how to be a mother. We'll figure it out together. I'll screw up. I'll make mistakes. So will I. That's kind of how parenting works, or so I've heard. Daniel laughed wetly, pulling her impossibly closer. I love you so much it terrifies me. Good. You should be terrified. I'm a nightmare when I'm hormonal and sleep-deprived. Can't wait. He kissed her then, soft and careful, tasting like hope and promises. When they pulled apart, his smile was brighter than she'd ever seen. We're really doing this? Co-parenting and relationship building and all the messy, complicated stuff. We're doing it. No running, no hiding. Just showing up even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, the doctor returned, eyeing them with amusement. Mr. Crawford, we'd like to keep you overnight for observation. The concussion protocol. I'll stay with him, Sophie said immediately. You don't have to. I'm staying. Her tone left no room for argument. Someone needs to make sure you actually rest instead of working on your phone. Daniel's smile was worth everything. Yes, ma'am. They spent the night in the hospital room. Sophie curled awkwardly in the chair beside his bed. Daniel's hand never leaving hers. They talked about the future, names for the baby, how to turn Daniel's spare bedroom into a nursery, whether Sophie would keep working or take extended maternity leave. "I'll support whatever you decide," Daniel said. "But Sophie, you don't have to work yourself to death anymore. If you want to take time with the baby, we'll make it work financially. I need to contribute. I need to feel like I'm pulling my weight. You're growing a human. That's pulling your weight." He squeezed her hand. "But I understand. We'll figure out something that works for both of us. Maybe you work part-time. Maybe you take a few months off, then go back. Whatever makes you feel good about yourself. You'd really do that? Support me either way. Sophie, I'm not trying to control your life. I'm trying to be your partner. Partners support each other's choices." The word partner settled over Sophie like a warm blanket. She'd been alone for so long that the idea of having someone to share decisions with felt almost foreign. But looking at Daniel, seeing the absolute sincerity in his eyes, she let herself believe it might be possible. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For not giving up on me when I gave you every reason to." I could say the same thing. Daniel brought her hand to his lips. "Sophie, I meant what I said earlier. I'm in this for the long haul. Through labor and midnight feedings and toddler tantrums. Through all of it. Even when I'm huge and swollen and yelling at you for breathing too loud. Especially then." Sophie laughed, the sound watery but genuine. "You have no idea what you're signing up for." "Then it's a good thing I'm a fast learner." As dawn broke over Boston, painting the hospital room in shades of gold and pink, Sophie let herself hope. Hope that Daniel Crawford was different, that his promises were real, that maybe, just maybe, broken people could build something beautiful together. The baby kicked, and Daniel's hand was immediately there, feeling the movement. His expression of wonder and fear and love made Sophie's chest tight. "Hi, little one," he murmured. "Your mom and I are figuring things out, but we promise we're going to do right by you." "No matter what," Sophie wiped away tears. "We should probably pick a name soon. What about Hope?" "Too on the nose." "Fair. What about Grace?" Sophie considered it. Grace, unearned favor. Second chances. New beginnings. Grace Crawford Blake. I like it. You're hyphenating? Our daughter, our name. Both of us. Sophie met his eyes. Unless you have a problem with that? Daniel's smile could have powered the entire city. No problem at all. Grace Crawford Blake it is. And just like that, they were a family. Messy, complicated, built from second chances and stubborn hope. But a family nonetheless. 3 months can feel like 3 lifetimes when you're waiting for a baby. That's what Sophie discovered as her due date approached. With Daniel by her side for every uncomfortable, terrifying, beautiful moment of it. He moved her into his penthouse at 37 weeks. Despite her protests about maintaining independence, "The stairs at your apartment are dangerous," he'd argued. "And if something happens, I want to be there immediately. Not stuck in traffic from Beacon Hill to Dorchester." Sophie had agreed. Mostly because climbing 3 flights of stairs had become legitimately dangerous, but also because she'd stopped pretending she didn't want him close. Now, at 39 weeks and counting, Sophie stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of Daniel's penthouse, watching the sunset over Boston Harbor. Her back ached, her ankles were swollen, and she was so ready to meet her daughter that she'd tried every old wives' tale to induce labor. Nothing worked. Grace was comfortable exactly where she was. "You know, watching won't make her come faster," Daniel said from behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders to knead the perpetual knots there. Maybe she's scared. Maybe she knows the world is complicated and difficult, and she's safer inside. Or maybe she's just like her mother, stubborn, determined to do things on her own. Timeline. Daniel's hands moved lower, massaging her lower back with practiced skill. "How's the pain?" "Constant, but manageable." Sophie leaned back against him. "Daniel, what if I'm terrible at this? What if I can't figure out what she needs? What if, then we'll figure it out together. That's what we do now, remember? No more doing everything alone." Sophie turned in his arms, studying his face. Over the past 3 months, she'd watched him transform from the guarded, controlled businessman into someone softer. He still worked too much, still had control issues, but he'd also attended every childbirth class, read every parenting book, and installed a baby monitor system that would put the Pentagon to shame. "You're going to be a great father," she said softly. "I'm terrified I'll screw it up." "Good. That probably means you'll try harder." Sophie smiled. "Besides, Grace won't know any different. You'll just be Dad, the man who showed up, the man who gets to watch her grow up. Daniel's hand settled on Sophie's stomach. I still can't believe this is real sometimes, that I get to be part of this. You're stuck with us now. No takebacks. Wouldn't dream of it. The contraction hit without warning, stealing Sophie's breath. She gripped Daniel's arms, riding out the wave of pain that seemed to start in her back and radiate everywhere. Sophie? Was that? Braxton Hicks. I've been having them all week. But even as she said it, another contraction hit, stronger than before. Okay, maybe not Braxton Hicks. Daniel's face went pale. Should I call the doctor? Get the hospital bag? Start timing. Daniel, breathe. Sophie managed to laugh despite the discomfort. First babies take forever. We have time. But Grace Crawford Blake had other plans. 4 hours later, Sophie was in a delivery room at Mass General, gripping Daniel's hand hard enough to leave marks, and wondering why anyone ever did this more than once. You're doing amazing, Daniel murmured, pressing a cool cloth to her forehead. So strong, so brave, I'm dying. This is how I die. Another contraction hit and Sophie screamed, all her carefully practiced breathing techniques forgotten in the face of actual agony. You're not dying. You're bringing our daughter into the world. Daniel's voice was steady, even though his face was almost as pale as hers. Just a little longer, okay? You've got this. I can't. You can. You're Sophie Blake. You've survived everything life has thrown at you. You can survive this. The doctor appeared between her legs, checking her progress. Almost there, Sophie. One more big push on the next contraction. I can't. Yes, you can. Daniel pressed his forehead to hers, his eyes locked on hers. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Push, Sophie. Bring our girl home, our girl. The words gave Sophie strength she didn't know she had. When the next contraction came, she bore down with everything she had left. Daniel's hand a lifeline, his voice in her ear the only thing keeping her grounded. And then, after what felt like an eternity and no time at all, a cry filled the room. It's a girl! The doctor lifted a tiny squirming bundle. Congratulations, Mom and Dad. Sophie couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Could only stare at the small, perfect human being that had just emerged from her body. Grace, her daughter. Their daughter. She's perfect, Daniel whispered, his voice thick with tears. Sophie, she's absolutely perfect. The nurse cleaned Grace quickly, then placed her on Sophie's chest. The weight of her was both heavier and lighter than Sophie expected. She was real, solid. Here, hi baby girl, Sophie managed, her own tears flowing freely. We've been waiting for you. Grace opened her eyes, dark blue and unfocused, and Sophie felt her entire world realign. Everything before this moment felt like prologue. This was the story, this tiny person who depended on her completely. Daniel's voice was hesitant. Can I hold her? Sophie nodded, watching as the nurses helped transfer Grace to Daniel's arms. He held her like she was made of glass, his large hands cradling her tiny body with reverent gentleness. Hey, Grace, he whispered. I'm Daniel. I'm going to be your dad. I know I'm not perfect. I'm going to mess up sometimes. But I promise I'll always show up. I promise I'll always love you. I promise I'll do everything I can to make sure you grow up safe and happy and knowing how extraordinary you are. Sophie's heart cracked wide open watching him. This man who'd been terrified of fatherhood, who'd never had a good role model, was already so clearly in love with her daughter that Sophie couldn't remember why she'd ever doubted him. Sophie, thank you. Daniel looked up, his face wet with tears. Thank you for letting me be part of this, for trusting me with her. I know I haven't earned it, but I swear I'll spend every day trying to deserve this. You already do, Sophie said softly. Look at her, Daniel. She already knows you're her dad. Grace had curled into Daniel's chest, her tiny fist gripping his shirt, making small, contented noises. She fit perfectly in his arms, like she'd been meant for him all along. The next few hours passed in a blur of visitors and paperwork and trying to figure out breastfeeding while exhausted beyond measure. Mia came and cried over Grace, declaring her the most beautiful baby ever born. Marcus brought flowers and made Daniel promise to bring Grace by the restaurant when she was old enough. Even Victoria sent a massive bouquet with a card that read, "Congratulations on your family. Maybe now you'll finally stop being an emotionally unavailable disaster. V." I think that's her version of blessing our relationship, Daniel observed, reading the card. She's terrible at sentiment. She means well. In her own dysfunctional way. By evening, they were alone again. Grace slept in the bassinet beside Sophie's bed. A perfect miniature human with her mother's nose and what Daniel swore were his eyes. Though Sophie insisted it was too early to tell. "I can't believe she's real," Sophie whispered, staring at their daughter. "I spent 9 months preparing, and I still can't believe she's actually here. Believe it. She's ours. We made her." Daniel paused. "Well, you made her. I'm just incredibly grateful you're letting me claim her." "Daniel, we need to talk about that." Sophie took his hand. "The birth certificate. You're listed as her father." His breath caught. "Sophie, I know she's not biologically yours." "I know that legally. There could be complications down the road. But Daniel, you're her father, in every way that matters. I want it official. I want her to have your name. I want everyone to know that you're her dad. What about the biological father? What if he shows up someday?" "He won't. He doesn't even know she exists." "And even if he did, he made his choice when he gave me a fake number and disappeared." Sophie's voice was firm. "You're the one who went to every appointment. Who assembled the crib at midnight. Who held my hand through labor and promised to show up every day. You're her father." Daniel was openly crying now. "I don't deserve you, either of you. Stop saying that. You deserve to be happy, Daniel. To have a family. To be loved without conditions or expectations." Sophie pulled him closer. "I love you. Grace will love you. And that's all that matters. I love you too. Both of you. So much it terrifies me. Good. Stay terrified. It'll keep you humble." Daniel laughed through his tears, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "How are you making jokes right now? You just pushed a human being out of your body. Endorphins. And possibly delusion from lack of sleep." Sophie's eyes drifted to Grace. "But seriously, Daniel, thank you. For everything. For not giving up on me when I pushed you away. For being patient while I figured out I could trust you. For being exactly what we needed. You're what I needed. You and Grace. You gave me a reason to be better. A family to come home to. A purpose beyond quarterly reports and acquisition deals." Daniel settled carefully onto the hospital bed beside her. "I never thought I'd have this. A partner who challenges me. A daughter to watch grow up. A reason to leave the office at reasonable hours. Don't make promises you can't keep. I know you, Daniel Crawford. You'll be back to your workaholic ways within a month. Maybe. But now I have a reason to come home. 2 reasons, actually." He looked at Grace, sleeping peacefully. "She's going to have me wrapped around her little finger, isn't she?" "Completely. You're doomed. Best doom I could imagine." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their daughter sleep. Outside, Boston hummed with its endless energy. But inside this hospital room, everything was quiet and perfect and exactly where it should be. "Sophie," Daniel said after a while. "Marry me." Sophie's eyes snapped open. "What?" "Marry me. Not right now. Whenever you're ready. But marry me, Sophie. Let's make this official. Let's be a real family in every way. We already are a real family. I know. But I want the world to know it too. I want Grace to have married parents. I want you to have my last name if you want it. I want to stand up in front of everyone and promise to love you forever." He shifted to look at her. "I don't have a ring. This is probably the worst proposal ever, given that you're exhausted and swollen and covered in various bodily fluids. Very romantic. But I can't wait another second without asking. Sophie Blake, will you marry me?" Sophie looked at Daniel, at his hopeful, terrified face. She looked at Grace, sleeping peacefully in her bassinet. She thought about the past 9 months, about everything they'd overcome to get here. "Ask me again in 6 months," she said finally, "when I'm not delirious from childbirth and actually have the brain capacity to make major life decisions." Daniel's face fell. "Oh, okay, I understand. I'm not saying no, you idiot. I'm saying ask me when I'm not covered in various bodily fluids, as you so eloquently put it. When I've had time to be sure this is what you really want. When the reality of 3 a.m. feedings and dirty diapers is set in, and you haven't run screaming." She smiled. "Ask me then. If you still want to, and I'll give you my answer. You're going to make me wait 6 months? Consider it a test. Proof that you're committed to the messy, unglamorous reality of family life. And if I pass the test, then I'll say yes, and you better have a really spectacular ring by then." Daniel's laugh was pure joy. "Deal, 6 months. I'll be counting down the days." "Good, because so will I." As they settled in for the night, Sophie with Grace at her breast, and Daniel curled protectively around both of them. Sophie felt peace settle over her like a blanket. She'd spent so long being afraid. Afraid to trust, afraid to hope. afraid to believe good things could last. But looking at Daniel's sleeping face, at Grace's tiny features, Sophie let herself believe in happy endings. Not the fairy tale kind with perfect circumstances and no problems, but the real kind, built from trust and forgiveness and choosing each other every single day. Grace stirred, making small hungry noises, and Daniel woke immediately, helping Sophie adjust for feeding even half asleep. Partners, that's what they were. Partners in the beautiful, terrifying, extraordinary adventure of building a life together. And 6 months later, when Daniel proposed again with a ring that made Sophie gasp and a speech that made her cry, she said yes without hesitation. Because she'd learned that sometimes the best love stories start with falling apart and finding someone willing to help you piece yourself back together. Sometimes, broken people really do build something beautiful. They just have to be brave enough to try.